Hello and welcome to the first event of the season, the first event for the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire in our new home here in downtown Manchester. We really appreciate everyone for coming out tonight in person, as well as for those people who are watching online, either live as part of the conversation or watching the recording. We really are excited to kick off the T. William and Patricia Ayers Global Tipping Point series on the future of AI. Our topic here tonight is on that 10,000-foot view of artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and all those fun terms we'll talk about here in a moment. But we are also looking forward to our next event on April 29th with Paul LeBlanc, former president of Southern New Hampshire University, about AI in higher education. That'll be at SNHU April 29th. And then we just confirmed our third speaker in this series today. It will be on AI in the military, May 29th. So we are hoping to be able to put that out in, get the registration page up soon. So be on the lookout for that. Please do sign up for those conversations. The World Affairs Council of New Hampshire, for those who do not know, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. And so we are here to work as a platform for conversations on international issues. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world these days to talk about, and we are trying to respond through our speakers programs, through our podcasts, through virtual engagements, and we thank you for sticking with us as we continue to try and unpack what changes and re-envisioning is going on the national level to the U.S.'s engagement with the world and how we view our role there. We are also a community-supported organization, so we thank all of our members, donors, and supporters for their wonderful support that makes this possible. A special thank you to our sponsors, Northlight AI, Andrew Mitchell here in the audience with us, New Hampshire Fulbright, who has been a long-term supporter of this series, Goodwell Foods, who provided our pizzas for tonight. You can pick them up in local stores, a New Hampshire-based pizza company. So thank you to them, and thank you to all of our members here tonight. If you are not yet a member, we would love to talk to you about ways that your support can help us continue to bring these programs to our global community. Okay, with all of that out of the way, we are going to turn it over for our conversation with Ben Porter, a founding member of Prometheus Endeavors, a think tank looking at all sorts of technology issues. Ben is a consultant and an educator with over 40 years experience in the field. He really likes the creative ways people can use technology to solve issues. If you want to look more at his background, please check out our website. I'll keep the intro short for that reason. But Ben, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So we are here to talk about AI, the hype, the reality, and what's next. So let's start with the hype. What is AI? What do we know about AI, and what should we know about it?
Yeah, well, first I think let's kind of level set things. Artificial intelligence, or the name, or things that have been called artificial intelligence have been around for quite a long time. It was in use even before I went to college. My freshman year, I took a course in which we were doing artificial intelligence. What were we doing? We were trying to evaluate a checkers board to determine strategies for playing checkers. Was that artificial intelligence that we call it today? No, but it was what we called it back in the 60s. If you fast forward to the 80s, Cambridge, Massachusetts, everybody's familiar with Main Street, Broadway. They were known as AI Alley. That was AI. There were all of these artificial intelligence companies that were that were growing and developing in that Cambridge, MIT, Harvard think tank area. What were they doing? It was something called expert systems or rule-based decision-making. One of my colleagues at Prometheus Endeavor in the 80s went to work as the chief information officer at Fannie Mae and put together an expert system that eventually became something called desktop underwriter. The challenge, Fannie Mae was trying to securitize mortgages, but every mortgage written in every town, every city, every state was different with different terms and conditions. And they were underwritten. Some had high risk, some had low risk, some you couldn't tell what the risks were. So with the desktop underwriter, an expert system that had literally tens of thousands of questions and rules, it eventually enabled the standardization of mortgages that enabled all of us to get mortgages when we were at that stage in our lives. What's changed is that and that was called AI at the time. Today, we have AI, and it's a different type of AI. Some of the terms that you'll hear used are machine learning, generative AI. You'll hear about AI superintelligence, AI general intelligence. It's all in a class of models, and they are models. This is a model like it's bigger than a spreadsheet model, but it's still a model, okay? It's a computer model. And generative AI is a kind of a description of the class of the current AI that's in use. What has gotten everybody's attention is that it can communicate in pretty decent grammar, and it can do some fairly interesting things. Translation, it can do, you can engage it in a conversation. You can have it write a report, and when you get into education, we'll see the pluses and minuses of that environment. But what's important, all of this is what has gotten everybody's attention, and I suspect it's the reason why you're here to find out more. So the question is, what is it important to know about AI? Well, I'm not going to tell you, some good news, I'm not going to tell you anything about the internal workings of it. We've got people here who can do that far better than I can. And furthermore, if we got into the explanation, it'd be right over everybody's head. So we're not going to get into the details of actually how it works. But what I would like to talk about are three things. The first is the benefits and the risks of AI. The second has to do with what kind of changes we can expect in our lives and in society in general, in the workplace as well, as a result of bringing AI into these environments. And the third has to do with regulation. And there's a lot of discussion about whether to regulate, when to regulate, how to regulate, and so forth. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Does anybody have a question at this point? Not yet.
One thing that you didn't mention that I think, particularly in the polarized political space we inhabit these days.
Really?
If you hadn't heard, I don't know. Deep fakes.
Deep fakes.
What are they? How are they used? Are they something we need to be concerned about? We know that Ukraine actually created a a deep fake of Putin saying that there was an emergency on the border of Russia and an entire town was evacuated, and people were celebrating that. Should we be celebrating that? What are your thoughts in that space?
Yeah, that gets right into the benefits, a discussion of the benefits and the risks. And deep fakes are a result of a type of generative AI, where it is you give it verbally some instructions, and based on the data that has been drawn into the particular model, it generates something that you have described. Generate a movie of Vladimir Putin saying, that they have just invaded Georgia, or that they are invading Poland, or have it go the other way. There have been fakes of Obama. There have been deep fakes of lots of people in Hollywood. There are a lot of people, especially in the creative arts, who are really, really worried about their intellectual property. What is it that an actor, my son is an actor, so I've got a little bit of a stake in this. What is it that they have to sell? It's their personality. It's their ability to become another character and to portray it effectively. And if an AI bot can do that and do it convincingly, does that diminish the value that particular individual brings to the table? There's a lot of discussion about that at this point in time. There's a lawsuit, and this gets sort of into regulation. There's a lawsuit that dealt with patent or copyright infringement at Thomson Reuters. Thomson Reuters is a company that basically is a repository of documents, legal documents, all kinds of written documents. And they just won a suit against somebody who basically read all of the documents in Thomson Reuters databases, processed them, and was selling the results of that analysis to other people. That basically cuts off a revenue stream for Thomson Reuters. They sued, and I believe they won. So, and the people who had built that particular bot, it wasn't particularly sophisticated. It wasn't anywhere near the level of a ChatGPT at this time. So those are absolutely significant risks in the deep fakes, and they're amazing. I took a quiz recently online to see if I could spot all the deep fakes, and I got about 70% of them correct. But there's the 30% that fooled me. So what kind of benefits can we get from AI? By the way, thank you for those of you who participated in the survey. There's a lot of the people in general who took the survey said that they think AI is going to have significant transformational effects on us. And personally, I would agree with that, but everybody seems to agree. But at the same time, the other edge of the sword, an equal number of people said they had significant concerns. The benefits are absolutely amazing. Some of the ways that AI is being used today, we've talked about authoring documents. I guess 2 years ago, I was on a tour, and I was sitting in the bus next to a woman who who worked for the City of Syracuse School Department in their HR department. And she at that time, and this is very early in the Chat GPT days, okay, she was using Chat GPT to draft emails and letters to employees and people outside of the school system. The city of Syracuse had blocked ChatGPT from their network. So how was she doing it? Well, she did it on her phone. She got a draft on her phone of the email or the letter she was going to write, and she emailed it to her business account, and then she modified it and then sent it out. So people, this is 2 years ago, this was already being used very early days. So authoring all kinds of things. And I think when we get into the discussions in education, you'll see the kind of adaptation that's going on both in the schools and in the universities. Yes, question.
There's a law firm which got into great trouble, I think in New York.
Yes.
They used ChatGPT to do research and to have it write, not only research the 100 pages of contract law, but had it write and author the petition that was submitted to the court. The other side, the competing ones, discovered that it made ChatGPT made up cases, made up citations in such a convincing way that the initial law firm, which did not have a junior associate check the work, they were deceived. So attorneys have to be, everyone has to be very careful.
Absolutely.
ChatGPT doesn't only do what you expect it to do, it does more. It's very creative.
You have to.
Sorry,
go ahead.
just so that people online
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
hear. So the statement was about how ChatGPT and lawyers have gotten each other in trouble as these systems have hallucinated cases and put them into briefings that have then been submitted to the court, and people have lost their licenses over
Yes,
this. People have had major life impacts based on the fact that they haven't taken the time to check their work and check the work of these generative
Yeah.
programs.
There's also ethical issues for lawyers. If a law firm uses ChatGPT to do all of the work, does it have an obligation, and instead of having a junior associate do it, does it have an obligation to disclose that to the client and reduce the bill? Something that lawyers, I assume, would be very...
Yeah, the question is, are there ethical issues having to deal with?
The answer is you must disclose to the client that you're using ChatGPT and you must reduce the bill. And the converse is true. Must a law firm disclose to a client that is not using ChatGPT when it could? The answer is yes, because you are depriving the client of potential.
Yeah. So there's
So
let me.
it's a landmine out there.
It's to paraphrase that, if I may, the ethical issues of if a law firm is using an AI to prepare a brief or to prepare a contract, you have to disclose it. Fine, probably, I would say. The next question is, do you if you then reduce the amount of billable hours that the associate or the partner puts in as a result, does that then have a net reduction in the bill to the client? Probably. Can you bill for the charges charged by ChatGPT or OpenAI? Probably. It would seem that is it going to have a net reduction in the cost of the services? I suspect it probably will. Yeah. Next.
So OpenAI's latest reasoning model is going to be priced at $20,000 a month.
$20,000 a month.
So I don't know how much a cost savings that's going to.
At a client level,
Yeah.
that's the if it's $20,000 a month, if they're paying junior associates $150,000 a year,
Yeah.
and you can get one or two associates. I mean, that's the type of trade-off people are going to be using. Other ways that they can be used and are used very effectively is doing research and summarization. I've recently used a bot that is developed by the Allen Institute, Paul Allen, Microsoft fame, and it does research. It's like a search engine, but the data that it is searching are only academic journals. So it has a restricted database. OpenAI is probably using as its database the entire searchable web. And we all know how reliable that is. For those of you who believe everything on the web, that's fine. Good. I read an article, but the research bot that we tested out was fascinating. It was providing specific citations that were links back to the articles. We tested they actually existed, not like the case, not in the cases. But these were academic articles, and they were good, but they weren't the best academic articles because they hadn't yet paid for access to the databases where the best of the academic articles are located. So one of the things that you have to be savvy about in using AI is understanding what's the underlying data that you are actually getting access to, and that's fascinating. There's in terms of summarization, I read an article this week about something called AI Scribe. Did anybody else see it? It's being used in a clinical environment in a doctor's office. How many of you have been to the doctor's office recently and your conversation with the doctor is like this? What was that? Okay. What was that? Okay. How you feeling? Okay. I went, and the answer is that's certainly the way it is with my doctor. My ophthalmologist has a little better deal. She has a scribe who comes in and who captures all of the information. And theoretically, I have a better conversation with the ophthalmologist. With AI Scribe, it's the doctor in the room and a microphone. And the scribe, the AI Scribe, listens to the complete conversation and documents it and summarizes it. Okay? Is it perfect? No. The doctors who have tried it, some of them said, wow, this caught things I didn't catch. It listened better than I did. Others have said, yeah, I had to go back and edit it because it wasn't exactly right. Okay? But what's happened is the doctors are spending their overtime time, or where they're doing all the documentation, reduced by 30%. Burnout among doctors, which is a significant problem, reduced significantly. So there are some really tangible benefits that can be achieved through application of AI in particular situations. Notice now when we talk about in the doctor's office, we're dealing with a restricted set of vocabulary, a restricted set of issues, a much more scoped down capability. We're talking about smaller AI, not large language models, maybe small language models, smaller language models. And there's, as we get further on, we'll talk more about that. Go ahead.
Talking about summarization, just this past week I got a document that was several hundred pages long. and a meeting immediately following it to discuss that document. Well, I just took the entire document and uploaded it into AI.
Right.
Asked my questions to AI, and it gave me back not only the answers to my question, but the page numbers that those things were on.
Right.
It was really very helpful saving me.
Yeah, that's absolutely, and this is one of the best use cases for AI that's out there right now, and anybody can use it. If you've got go to the law firm, go back to the law firm example. If an entry-level law clerk today, right out of law school, is going to be spending most of their time doing research and summarizing. A lot of this is pretty miserable work. These guys, they burn lots and lots of time, bill lots and lots of hours, and probably wind up absorbing a huge amount of information themselves. A lot of that work could be done through the use of AI. A, through the search, and B, through the summarization, and picking out the salient points. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to be as good as other people in that incoming class of new lawyers? It's probably going to be as good, maybe a little better, C, maybe B minus. But it's certainly going to make the process a lot more efficient. Whether it's making it any better or not is another issue. Your case sounds like it did both.
If I can add to that.
Please do.
So you have a person who's reading that, and they're putting their own spin on what they read. So they're spinning it just as well as AI is spinning it.
Absolutely.
And that goes
Yeah.
back, you were talking about deep fakes earlier. Many years ago, I created a fake news article that was just meant to go within a small community, and it somehow got away from us, and people thought that was a real story.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, but just with new technology.
Right. It is the same thing. It's with new technology, and it's new technology on steroids. Yeah, in the back.
Have you identified any limitations to its ability to summarize documents it reads?
Have we identified any limitations to its ability to summarize? A great example of that is Apple Intelligence. Okay, they deployed it. I think what was it this fall, and frankly, it didn't work very well. Part of the problem with Apple Intelligence is they're trying to make it work on your phone, okay, which is probably underpowering the problem. And they were trying to summarize a text message string or articles from a variety of news sources that you might be getting notifications on, and it was mixing up what was going on in Article A with Article B, and they basically pulled the capability. So yeah, there are limitations. I also downloaded recently an AI that will work on my laptop, and I challenged it and Claude, which is from Anthropic, and OpenAI, to plan a trip to Amsterdam for me. 3-day trip to Amsterdam. Simple. The results from Claude and OpenAI were very readable, and covered all of basically the hot spots, the best places in Amsterdam. The one that was on my laptop was more like a bunch of bullet points. Okay, so it doesn't have OpenAI, Anthropic, all of the others, Google. They've got server farms the size of downtown Manchester, filled with computers that are sucking all kinds of energy into the process, versus my little battery-powered laptop. What did I possibly expect? And the answer is there are limitations. Many of the limitations that we're going to run into, I think, have to do with resource consumption. To give you a sense, and this is as far as I'm going to get into the inside workings of a model. OpenAI, the earliest versions were based on huge matrices of data. And the matrix, when I talk about a huge matrix, I'm talking about not thousands of columns and thousands of rows, not millions of columns. We're talking billions of columns, billions of rows. Okay, a lot of data. Okay, you can't do that on a laptop. The earliest OpenAI bots were criticized because you couldn't tell how they got to a result. Within a year, we started seeing reasoning models. The reasoning models require 10 times the power consumption to generate the model, and 10 times as much to be able to do the inference, to actually operate. As we increase as you try to decrease the hallucinations, you're going to have to increase the data and increase the processing of that data. And some of the estimates I've seen are that those increases to get that extra, suppose we've got 5% hallucinations, if we're going to get it down to 2% hallucinations, which is halving the error rate, it's going to take between 10 and 100 times the resources to get that to happen. So there are limitations. There will be limitations. I don't know, Andrew, do you feel the same way?
100, yeah, I mean, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Could you say a little more about the tremendous amount of energy
Yeah.
that AI is taking away from the systems that we have? I think Microsoft, which does a lot of AI, 2 weeks ago announced that it was buying the nuclear reactor at 3 Mile Island. Now, Tim is too young.
I remember songs about it, actually.
Well, that's a help. Yeah.
They have bought, or they have an arrangement with reactor number 1 or
Yeah.
2, and they are going to buy 100% of everything that nuclear reactor can
Yeah.
generate
So,
for one of its databases.
Yeah.
And it raises the issue of what does that do to the cost of our electricity if all of the things you're saying about businesses and whatnot are going to be sucking up the energy from the grid. Our costs are going to go through the roof, I
Yeah.
suspect. Maybe I'm wrong, but what energies are we going to be using? Do we go back to nuclear, or what is there that happens down the road that
And then charging all the
but-
electric cars as well, right?
Yeah.
And then charging all the electric cars at the same time.
yes, right?
So the question is about energy consumption, utilization. What does it take away from other uses? How does that affect our valuations?
right. And the answer is yes. This is, first of all, the availability of energy is a significant constraint to everything right now. We're in an energy transition going from fossil fuels to renewables. Are the renewables replacing the fossil fuels? No. It's just an incremental addition. The fossil fuels are going to continue to be there. Why? Because there's the demand for power, and a retired nuclear plant can be put online a lot faster than building a brand new one, which could take 10 to 20 years, maybe 30 years if you count regulatory. Yeah.
Just a note, I've seen on a number of the financial newsletters, one of the major threads are the small mobile reactors.
Right.
That are being, the companies doing them have contracts already with the Department of Defense and other major suppliers, and it's really amazing when you look at the technology. It's way outside my wheelhouse, but the amount of uranium they have to use is minuscule compared to replacing the rods in a uranium facility.
Yeah, so the question is about the micro reactors that are theoretically you can put them on the back of an 18-wheeler and drive them to a location, put them in a hole in the ground, and hook them up to the grid. The military is looking at those to power naval bases, army bases, that type of thing. Those are still, they haven't fielded any of them yet. And I suspect that it will be 3 to 5 years before the first one gets put into place. The concept behind it is terrific because you can build them in a factory and get all kinds of efficiencies that you would get from working in a factory environment, learning curve and so forth. And all you have to do is to prepare the site and put them in place and hook them up, theoretically. That's the goal. Whether it actually comes to pass and how quickly it comes to pass is another question. But if it does, that could be a way of leveraging the creation of new power generation. Likewise, fusion energy is another area, and the joke in the fusion energy industry is we're 20 years away from having fusion energy, and we always will be. So,
and in terms of efficiencies, what is the promise of quantum computing in combining that with AI to process and churn this data at a lower energy use rate? Is there any savings to be had there once we potentially unlock quantum computing?
Quantum computing is a completely different breed of cat. The problems that are the type of problems that you would solve using quantum computing are problems that are very difficult to solve or impossible to solve using what we call traditional computing. They are the traveling salesman problem is a classic, which is find the optimum route for a salesman to go from between 50 cities. As it turns out, there's so many options that it's difficult to evaluate them all. So quantum computing solves a completely different class of problem than AI kinds addresses. I did see an interesting article the other day about somebody had fed astronomical observation data into an AI bot, and it was able to project orbits of various celestial bodies. Okay, very interesting. It did not devise Newton's laws. It did not devise any laws of orbital mechanics or any of these other things that we currently use in current computing. But it did effectively predict where celestial bodies are going to be, could probably predict when an eclipse is going to occur, those types of things. But it generated a prediction without the underlying equations, the laws of gravity, so forth and so on, that are essential to understand why it works. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it can project where it's, okay. But one of the things I would say about that is that because AI is based on data, okay, because data is based on history, okay, it can project the future where a particular orbital body is going to be at a particular time, but it assumes that nothing is going to change, that there's not going to be another introduction of another force, another dynamic that might change the direction, such as somebody sending a spaceship up and deflecting an asteroid. Okay, that's not in the model. Okay, so and you can't understand what's going to happen to that asteroid unless you have the underlying model. Whereas if all you're going to do is project, where the asteroid, what part of Earth the asteroid's going to hit, it might be able to do that fairly effectively, but not if you introduce this rocket going up and changing the orbital mechanics. So it's based on history, and as long as history predicts the future, you're fine. Okay. Yeah.
Can I ask another question about limitations?
Absolutely.
So you talk about being able to have a C+, B- AI-powered lawyer.
Yeah.
And possibly soon. Is that limitation bound primarily by the energy limitations that we currently are dealing with, or is some of it due to like architectural design?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, sorry, just to repeat the question for the online audience. Talking about limitations and are the limitations for an AI lawyer based on energy demands, energy limitations, or is it based on the structural design of an AI system?
And again, the answer is yes. So no, there are lots of limitations. If the class of AI bots that are out there today, the large language model based ones, they're on a curve that says, give me more data, spend more energy, and I'll give you a better result. Okay. Along comes DeepSeek, the Chinese firm, which didn't have access to the fastest chips, and was on a small budget. And they hired a bunch of fresh out of school engineers and said, forget what these other people are doing, figure out another solution. And they did. Very clever engineering solution. They re-architected the system. Instead of one large language model, they broke the problem down as an engineer would, broke it down into smaller components, and figured out how to take a query, break the query down, farm it out to the smaller models, and then figure out how to bring it back together to give a response. Now, what that tells me is that there are other architectural innovations that we're probably going to see, and that we're going to see more efficient models that don't consume as much energy. But I think within any particular given language model, it's still going to be data and processing cycles and that are going to drive the effectiveness of any component. Okay? Yeah.
And the thought currently is that they use OpenAI to train those sub-models.
Okay. So the question is, are they used? And the other piece is DeepSeek apparently used OpenAI to help train its model. Because
Each one of those
each one of the submodels. Now, how do you when you're developing a model, you want it to be an optimal model. Okay, so if you if as an example, you want your model very simply to take a look at a picture and say, is it a rabbit or a duck? Okay, there's kind of 4 outcomes in that model. It looks at a rabbit and it says it's a rabbit. It looks at a rabbit and says it's a duck. And on the other hand, it looks at a duck and it says it's a duck, or it looks at a duck and it says it's a rabbit. Now, when you try to optimize a model, you want to probably eliminate the duck-rabbit confusion as much as possible. You want ducks to come out as ducks and rabbits to come out as rabbits. But in the process of building the model, you may find that you're better at distinguishing a rabbit, that a rabbit is a rabbit, but not a duck. But on the duck side, you can't do as well on looking at a duck and distinguishing whether or not it's a rabbit. So there's lots of ways, and when you optimize, you're trying to minimize your errors, okay? And if you can define what that error is, they're defining, DeepSeek used OpenAI to compare results to see whether is it as good as OpenAI. And that was the way they tested their model and tuned it to be as good as OpenAI. So you have to have something to test against. Yeah, Peter.
Knowing that we're time constrained,
Yeah.
I'd like you to get into the safety
Yeah.
regulation aspects.
Okay.
Now, if you could, but I don't want to dictate it.
Well, that's where I was going to take things next as well. As Ben, you and I have spoken a number of times about regulation, about what that can look like. I know it's something that Prometheus Endeavor has written about, but specifically in the international space, how do we regulate something that China is working on, that Russia is working on, that the United States is working on? You have these conflicting powers who have conflicting goals.
I'll start off by saying there are 2 kinds of regulation, de facto and de jure. Okay, the de jure is on the basis of laws. Okay, de facto is what happens in the marketplace. Zoom at one point was recording all of the conversations in a corporate environment and doing summarizations and so forth and so on. The companies that were using Zoom had a fit because they were recording product development conversations, and they didn't want that being shared into other AI bots. There was a hue and cry in the marketplace, and Zoom very quickly turned that capability off, and they've been very careful about rolling it out. So de facto regulation is going to happen. The good news is it's quick. Now we move into de jure. De jure regulation is anything but fast. Okay, it takes forever to get regulations, and then we've got issues about anytime you deploy an AI like DeepSeek, okay, which is from China, or OpenAI, which is ostensibly U.S. It's available to everyone in the world because it's on the internet. Okay, there is no global regulation of AI. The regulation currently is taking place at the state level or the union level, the EU. The EU, the UK are currently very active in the regulatory space. And in the US, the National Bureau of Standards, NIST, has published some guidelines, but not regulations. Okay? However, because we are a union of 50 states, and our states act as petri dishes for regulation, the states of Virginia and Colorado have just recently put into law AI regulations. Now, we can argue about are they spitting into the wind? And they probably are, because it's the jurisdiction is state of Virginia versus state of Colorado. But we can learn from what they're trying to do. Colorado's law is focused more in the corporate environment and on the issue of discrimination. AI, if it's trained with discriminatory data, will be discriminatory. And so their regulations are focused around making sure that something that is making a recommendation or making a decision doesn't have adverse discriminatory impact. Virginia, their scope is you and me and household. So it's a household and consumer level. And they're trying to limit what their regulation applies to by saying it has to be high impact, high risk decision making. Okay? So the AI that sorts through your inbox and classifies spam, low impact, low risk. The AI that's making, that could be making decisions about, they also, by the way, take out of it autonomous vehicles. There's an issue. They don't define, they don't give good examples for what these might be, but think of a decision that might have a significant impact. Maybe a financial decision, maybe a career decision, maybe something like that. But they say, it has to be AI. There has to be a significant risk of harm, and there has to be it has to have a big influence on the decision being made. Either it's making the decision or it's a primary recommendation for the decision. It's an interesting concept. What they ask you to do is you have to do an assessment, and you have to adopt risk management kinds of scenarios. You have to be transparent. That's the type of focus that the Virginia law is doing. So I think it's an interesting one, but it's interesting to see the differences between the two, and it'll be interesting to see if any of that eventually bubbles up through our own federal legislative process. At the national and global level, China has regulations, and the regulations are you cannot say anything that isn't Xi Jinping thought. Okay? Little side note on that, some of the OpenAI and Claude and so forth and so on have been very clever in figuring out how to avoid saying prohibited things, and I expect that Chinese bots will get equally creative in getting around those kinds of regulations. But the EU in particular and the UK are both in the process of implementing regulations around privacy and AI. And it's going to be, we're in the absence of laws in the U.S., as people in the U.S. deploy AI, it's going to have to basically meet the tests of the EU and the UK.
It's
probably where it's going to go, because I don't think we're going to be doing it fast enough. Yeah.
There's another barrier out there, but let me just say, when you go to Amsterdam, you're not gonna be able to Google anything about anybody. They have it, the right to privacy is in their Bill of Rights, unlike here in the United States. I cannot Google you if I am in Amsterdam. It will not tell me anything. A box will come up saying that you're prohibited,
Right.
so you're safe.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
So just difference in privacy laws between the U.S. and,
Yeah.
and EU. EU being much more restrictive than what we see here in the U.S.
The question really is about China.
Yeah.
And a barrier there. You mentioned some of the phenomenal things that the Chinese are doing.
Yeah.
The best-selling EV globally is not Tesla.
BYD.
It's BYD. It's a Chinese car,
Yeah.
which people say is far better from a technological view than Tesla, which is more stylish and it's a lower price. I cannot buy that car because in the United States we have a 100% tariff, which prevents me from accessing the Chinese
That's correct. Yes.
creation, the
Yeah.
technology there.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, should we have open borders when it comes to the exchange of technology? In Europe, the European Union is based upon open borders, open ideas, and a free exchange of people. But we've got a tariff there would prevent you from buying. From a climate control point of view, that is the best car to buy.
Yeah. So the question has to do with the barriers, trade barriers between the U.S. and China in particular. The AI community, in its earliest stages in the last, I'd say, decade or more, has been very research focused. And there has been an enormous exchange of intellectual property openly at the university level, research level. There are probably more AI papers being written in China than in the U.S. today. And the papers that are being written in the U.S. are typically co-authored with Chinese professors as well. So they're not putting tariffs on intellectual property yet. It seems to flow pretty freely back and forth. In terms of physical products, that's where the current focus is. You had mentioned the BYD car. What I've read, I've not seen one, but what I've heard is that it is, as you say, technologically superior to the Tesla and the other American-made electric vehicles. And it's also half the price or less. I think they've got a price point at around $10,000, and probably going up to 20. But that is a significant accomplishment in terms of the underlying intellectual property and their ability to design a good-looking car and put it out on the road and put it out in quantity to scale it up. That's an amazing capability, and we just have to be aware that that's out there. Yeah.
Did the 100% tariff just come in with Trump, or was that before that?
I believe that's within the last few months.
So the question was, when did that tariff come into
I think
down?
it's,
And it was
did Biden do it?
under Biden, but within the past few months. Mike, I know you had a question too.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are with regard to the use of AI in the future and whether or not it will be used ultimately to help defeat propaganda efforts or enable propaganda. It seems to be a very serious problem.
Again, yes.
So just to
Yeah.
repeat the question, will AI be used to enhance or defeat propaganda?
I'm gonna put my hat on enhancing propaganda. From the onset, if you go back to the 90s, the first applications of the internet were It was porn, basically. It was the Wild West. And right now, in terms of propaganda and the use of AI, I think there's a huge Wild West component to it. Is there a way to block propaganda? Is there a way to mitigate it? That's a great question. Theoretically, we have First Amendment rights to say anything we want, and any attempt to block somebody else's thought is going to be viewed as censorship. The people who are experts at propaganda know how to flood the zone, and they flood the space with their view of what is correct. So my sense is it's going to be a competitive environment, and if you think you're on the right side, you ought to be investing heavily in getting your message out. Yeah, Andrew.
I thought it was interesting that with the whole deepfake conversation, as now there's politicians worldwide who are claiming real events are deepfakes. So they're actually using confusion around AI to claim that reality didn't happen or something didn't happen. So that's a whole other layer of misinformation.
So Andrew was saying that there are deepfakes out there, or deepfakes to
Deepfakes about deepfakes.
Deepfakes about deepfakes.
Yeah.
So
politicians saying something that actually did happen is actually a deepfake and not something that really happened.
Yeah.
So we also had a question online from Nina that I wanted to bring in, and she's concerned about the quote-unquote dumbing down of people as people become more reliant on generative AI. How can we utilize AI? How can we work to create perhaps some regulations, whether they're de facto or de jure, to ensure that we are not being overly reliant on AI?
Yeah. We had the same argument when Texas Instrument came out with electronic calculators. We had the same argument when automobiles replaced buggies and the buggy whip manufacturers said we don't have the skills and the knowledge about making buggy whips. AI is going to come in. Properly done, it's going to augment jobs as opposed to automate jobs, okay? And parts of the skills that we learned, touch typing, those kinds of things, may atrophy, may wane overall in the population, but we'll have other ways of being able to communicate and to do things that are required. The lawyer example is a great one. The lawyer's doing research and learning about from reading all of these cases and summarizing them and finding the salient facts. If that is all done instead by AI, then yes, it will be more efficient, but it will be different. It will be different. Think about the autonomous vehicles. The training data that's going into the autonomous vehicles has a lot to do with the driven car world. Will autonomous vehicles reduce accidents? They'll reduce the kind of accidents that we're having now, but they will introduce new kinds of accidents. Okay, like the Tesla that runs into a fire truck because it was confused by the lights. With every introduction of technology, there's going to be an atrophy of particular skills or capabilities that we have, but it's going to require the development of new capabilities and new skills. There's a new job category, prompt engineer. People who are trained to figure out how to prompt OpenAI to give the result that they're looking for. And that's a whole new and those are the guys making the big bucks today, as the high-end prompt engineers. Are you a prompt engineer?
Yeah, I work as a part-time prompt engineer, and I make around $7,000 a month.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Touching my tuition.
Yeah. And you're still in school. Okay, so once you've got that degree, ba-boom. Yeah.
So we haven't talked about the embodiment of AI.
Yeah.
I'm just following the latest robotics that just came out of NVIDIA GTC, and it's pretty amazing now that you can have an autonomous, robot that can put away the groceries, that can put dishes in the dishwasher. It's just the beginning of that. So in terms of replacing jobs, that could take a lot of manual work away as well.
Yeah, there's.
Sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
just to repeat.
Sorry.
About the embodiment of AI, putting AI into robots and having them do tasks that people would typically do, and what is that going to mean for manual labor and manual jobs moving forward?
Yeah, there's been some discussion about a lot of discussion about job augmentation versus job automation or replacement. And there's no question that jobs will be eliminated. But there will be a requirement for new jobs to be created. There will be jobs for a long time that are going to be a hybrid of human effort and some type of bot. I will tell you one little story I found humorous. It was frustrating at the time. I was calling customer service, and I got caught. You find this hard to believe. I got caught talking to a bot. Probably never happened to any of you. And in the middle of this conversation, trying to get to the point where I could speak to a human, I finally says, "Let me speak to a representative." And the bot responded to me, "I can't do that right now." And all I could think of was Stanley Kubrick, 2001 Space Odyssey. I said, well, we've come full circle. So, no, that actually happened. So, no, I think there is going to be careers that change. How does a junior lawyer came up through the ranks by first doing the research, writing the summaries, preparing the partner for the trial or the big meeting with their client. Okay, if they're relying more on AI, are they going to be as prepared by the time they become the partner in the law firm and dealing with the big client or going to trial? That's a question yet to be discovered. I don't know. I don't know the answer. The same thing with doctors. If the doctors are using this AI scribe, are they going to become better doctors as a result? Or is that going to take away some of the skills that they had? The stories that we're hearing is that it's going to make their lives a lot better and give them the opportunity to focus more on the patient. Yeah.
And now they have the ability to look at x-rays.
Yeah.
And actually detect things that radiologists would oversee.
Exactly. Dermatologists, I got more than enough fun on my skin than I need. But now I can take a photograph of a mole and upload it to the AI, and it says either get there quick, schedule surgery, or doesn't look like a problem, or needs another look. They're already doing that, and they can do that, with taking a picture with the phone. Mammograms, the same thing. Chest X-rays, all of that is now. It's much easier to put it through some type of an AI. Are they good? Some of them are good. Some of them have to be improved. But mammograms for years had been transmitted to India to have the pathologists and so forth take a look at the mammograms there, and then send the diagnosis back. So it's been outsourced to doctors in India, radiologists in India. Now it's being outsourced to.
And so that brings up the question in terms of regulation of who owns this data, especially when you're talking about medical conditions and medical data. Do the doctors own it? Do the creators of the AI own it? Do we own it as it's our own personal health data?
Right. HIPAA regulations have. The answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
The answer is I don't know for sure, but at least the ability to access it is controlled. I would hope that HIPAA regulations would probably put up at least a hurdle to having all of our health data downloaded into some AI database. But I suspect that in the UK, where they have the National Health Service and they have a single health database for everybody in the UK, there's a much more interesting opportunity to take advantage of the data that is there, and also to protect privacy. But the balkanization of the data that we have in the U.S. makes that incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult.
HIPAA and medical records aside, I think the rule in the EU is that the data belongs to that entity that makes use of that data,
right?
Whoever that happens
to be. And
so,
again,
sorry, just to repeat, in the EU, Peter believes that it is the entity that is utilizing the data that owns that data, whoever that may or may not be.
And that brings up all kinds of very interesting questions about when, who has the right to share the data, what can be done with it, what kind of privacy protections are required, those kinds of things. EU has got some very stringent privacy laws. So U.S., as I say, it's a rat's nest. It's pretty crazy. But UK and EU, very, very stringent privacy laws.
So I know we are past time, and I thank you for sticking with us, and it's been a fascinating conversation. But I do want to end with one other question that came in online from someone who wants to stay anonymous but may be related to me. And he is wondering if you had the key to unlock any AI challenge, one AI challenge, what would you want to unlock here today?
Wow. That's a great question.
That's why I held it for the end.
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't have an answer. I don't know. Andrew, do you have any thoughts? No. Yeah. The
accuracy.
I mean, I think the accuracy issue, I think, is important. But I think that is being addressed. There has been so much negative publicity about hallucinations that I think there is a real sensitivity about that. Witness Apple pulling back their Apple Intelligence. As soon as you've tried multiple AI bots, you discover that they're different. And that you prefer one versus another. The latest edition of OpenAI, which is I think 4.5, is apparently doesn't give better answers, but it makes you feel better. It introduces a better feel to it. So I'm not sure that's a good thing. But I think that the progress in terms of things that people are looking for or fearful of have to do with general intelligence and super intelligence. I think we're still a long way away from that. I'm going to guess that most of us here don't have to worry about it. But I think, that's, is AI going to take over the world? I don't think so.
Well, I'll take a stab at answering that question for myself. It would be what we've talked about in the past, is striking that perfect balance of regulation that encourages the best and discourages the worst. I don't know that we'll get there. I don't know what that looks like, but if I could unlock the golden rule for that, that's where I would put my money.
We are in early times with AI. It has come out of the lab and the experimental phase. It is going into a phase of rapid exploitation, and it's going up the curve, but it's not an exponential curve, it's an S curve. It's going to get to a point where it runs either, in one sense, it runs out of gas, or it gets controlled. And you're right, striking that balance, when do you apply the brakes? When do you apply the controls? That's a very, very tricky decision to make. I think we're still in that exponential growth phase, and I think we have to let it run for a certain extent. I love these attempts that they're doing, Virginia and Colorado. They're not going to have any impact, but they are going to. They're going to have a. They're going to start giving us a language to discuss the kind of regulation that we need.
Yeah, and they will have an impact because they've been brought up here tonight.
Exactly.
And this is not the end of the conversation. This is the beginning of the conversation. So we hope that you all have enjoyed this opportunity to dive deeply into the topic. We are looking forward to our future events on April 29th and May 29th to talk about AI in higher education and AI in military. I hope you'll all be able to join us for those conversations as well, whether here in person or online. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to future conversations.